We're talking a lot about the quarterbacks in the NFL draft and really the quarterback in the NFL draft, Cam Ward, and how likely he is at this point to be the number one overall pick by the Tennessee Titans. Anytime we talk about players, we defer to people who are much smarter than us when it comes to the consumption and the breaking down of tape. And so we outsource today to Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports. Football 301 is the podcast. You can check it out wherever you get your podcast. It's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for jumping on short notice. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You sent me the 5 a.m. text my time yesterday, and I just must have missed it. It must have been I glanced at it and then put it back down, and then this morning I wake up and I'm like, oh shoot, got to text Buck back. So I'm glad I got to come on anyway. So I'm very happy to be here. You said you're going to have smarter people on though, so I'm sorry that I'm default. The two sweetest words in the English language.
The
default.
old next day response to the "you up" text is what Buck got.
It was a you up text. I don't know if Buck was completing the night from Prime 47 or if that was just him working up night bright and early on a Monday morning.
I get up early, but I forget that you're in a different time zone, so I'm deeply apologetic about sending you a 5 a.m.
Don't worry.
text.
I have a 2-year-old son, so I'm up about 5:30 every day anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
Still, one you are obligated to deal with, and the other one you can just, basically, you can respond to those with a middle finger emoji, and I'll circle back a couple hours later. That's typically
it was all good. It was all good. We're here.
People should text back at 5 a.m. in the morning. Yes, indeed, we are here, and so is your analysis of Cam Ward. Obviously, people can hear you on Football 301 on a regular basis, where you guys have talked about a great many prospects, players and teams in this draft, but I always enjoy the deep dives that you do, Nate, at yahoo.com and yahoosports.com, and your Cam Ward piece was no different. The word that you used to describe him, or the best word that you used to describe him, is creative, and I wonder if you could flesh that out specifically with examples that you saw and where you saw him take the biggest jump, because as you note in the piece, this is a player that's been a lot of different spots, played a lot of football at a bunch of different levels, and the experience that he is going to bring to the next step of his football career is going to be a fascinating one to see how it translates.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting with Ward is I watch a lot of these guys as the season's going along, but I'm not taking like detailed notes. I'm not looking too much at stats. I'm not pulling clips to post on Twitter for dopamine, for a few likes or retweets or anything. So when I write these articles, it's a lot more fun because I'm really deep diving, watching 6 games and pulling clips and seeing more trends and seeing more like, okay, this is what this guy is. And when you watch Cam Ward, the first thing you see is just how creative he is. Unorthodox was another word I used in there. And kind of the realization I came to was there was always a reason why he was doing something funky. And maybe a comparison I brought up to was maybe a point guard throwing a behind the back pass. And at first you're like, oh, that's flashy. Why are you doing that? But then you realize when you get to the highest levels, sometimes that's the best pass because you're trying to accomplish what the task is. And that's something that really grew on me with Ward was as I watched him, his sense of timing, his sense of understanding the concept and what he needs to achieve on the concept is good. Like it's a high baseline, way more than I even gave him credit for. And that's why you want to watch these guys, even go deep dive into it was, yeah, he's throwing something sidearm, but it's because he knows he has to get rid of the ball at this time to make the play as most efficient as it could be or most explosive it can be to get the high end result that you can get out of a play. His sense of timing, his anticipation really was, I would put it at the good landmark, maybe even better than that, which was really, again, it grew on me. And I think because this is a guy that hasn't been groomed since 9 years old to be a quarterback, and he doesn't play robotic. He plays like an athlete. And I'm not saying that as a stereotypical word as we describe some guys and going like, oh, this guy is an athlete, but he's not a quarterback. He's an athlete in the sense as he knows how to contort his body. He knows how to play in a winning position and get things and accomplish things and get things done, even if he's not in an ideal position. And the irony of that, he's not exceptionally fast. He's a good enough speed. He's an efficient scrambler is the term I kind of came to. He can get that first down, get down, we're good. You can maybe do a design run with him in short yardage, and then you're good with that, or some draws. But he's not an overwhelmingly fast athlete. He doesn't have an overwhelming arm. It's a good arm. But again, this whole combination of like his background not being kind of unorthodox, being a wing T quarterback in high school, being a small recruit or a small star recruit, I think a 1-star or no star recruit, going to Incarnate Ward, going to Wazoo, these offenses that are very spread and, dink and dunk and get rid of the ball quickly. You have to throw the screen because that's what our run game is. It's actually led to now this kind of, I wouldn't say a final product, but a prospect that does things unusually, but it's with a good sense of timing, a good sense of playing quarterback in his head. So like I said before, it's like he just really, really grew on me the more I studied him. And I gave him more credit now I'm giving him more credit than maybe I have in the last few months.
Well, and I love that you brought up, to the point of, well, a lot of these players, that the training is so specific from such a young age that they start to become robotic, or maybe cookie cutter is not the right word, but there's a certain way that people have an expectation for players at that position to look or to work through their progressions or to go through all the mechanics that the position requires, so that when you throw in somebody who doesn't necessarily have that background but is still playing the position at a high level, I think it does the player a disservice when the people studying the position get a bit of a wild card thrown into the mix there, and they just kind of throw up their hands and be like, well, he doesn't look like the rest of them, or he doesn't play like the rest of them, so maybe he's not as good as the rest of them. I feel like that's almost been a part of the conversation around Cam Ward. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair to describe it that way. I think it's like a jazz musician that actually knows how to read music. It's going to seem offhand and seem like, wow, that guy's one of a kind and unique, and I don't know if that's sound. And then when you realize that he plays very sound, and that's what's really cool. Like, he gets the job done, even if it's not robotic. I think Tennessee right now has a quarterback that plays very robotic and very overcoached in a way. And I'm not saying the current coaching staff, I just mean over time with Will Levis, and that he can be very robotic. I have to go 1, 2, 3, and the ball has to get out just like this. While Cam Ward will have a different rhythm. The rhythm is correct. And it's a weird disconnect as far as his play style and how I'm trying to describe him, that there's more soundness to it. But again, when you're getting away from a guy that's like, well, this is how I was taught at 14-year-old 7-on-7 camp, and this is what I'm going to be robotic. Whoa, the pocket's not clean. That window is not there and perfect and pristine because we're not throwing routes on air. That's what's really cool, watching Cam Ward be a football player and be an athlete while doing the things that you have to do to be a good quarterback. So it's it's a fun combination. He doesn't have some of the overwhelming traits, but again, it just has a lot of that good base mark that I think is really growing on not just me, but I think other people that are watching him and studying him as well.
He's Nate Tice of Yahoo Sports. You can read his piece on Cam Ward up at yahoosports.com or sports.yahoo.com right now. You can also follow the podcast, Football 301, wherever you get your podcasts.
So, Nate, Cam Ward, it sounds like his career has been littered with misconceptions at every turn, right? Wing T offense in high school, so he can't throw the football. The bowl game situation in Miami, he quit on his team at halftime. That was the plan going in, if you ask Mario Cristobal and that coaching staff. The turnovers, he's a turnover issue. He's had 14 interceptions in the last 2 years combined. You've listed a lot of them just now, but to you, what is the single biggest misconception about Cam Ward as a quarterback prospect?
Well, yeah, just kind of what I've been describing, kind of just more of his loosey style, but actually it's sound style. Some of the turnover stuff is very real. I would say that, more of the strip sacks is something that he would have to maybe, clean up at the next level. He has over 30 career fumbles, doesn't have the biggest hands. It's 9-inch hands, which is like right at that cutoff, of all that. But I would say maybe even another misconception is because he has a natural sidearm throwing style, that is quote unquote bad. Like that is just because it's unusual and not, picture perfect, doesn't look like Roger Clemens, pitching off the mound, like, oh, this must be bad, that's actually a benefit to how he plays. I talked about how he can find windows and change his arm slot. He naturally is able to do that while keeping some accuracy with it. And also I would say I think usually when you see a quarterback that might be sub 6'2", he was just under 6'2", throws sidearm, he gets a lot of balls batted down. Cam Ward only had 4 balls batted down this entire season. Shadur Sanders had 10. It's just not even, he again knows how to accomplish a task, even if it's an unusual way of getting there. And that's like another instance of that, is that he can change his arm slots to find those angles. And that's what you need to do in the NFL level. So I think maybe the misconception, if I just want to kind of summarize all of this, is that he's more pro ready than he's getting credit for, because of just his understanding of timing and understanding of how to get rid of the ball on time. That's what you need more than anything in the NFL, because the windows are just so small that you're a half second late and you don't have an overwhelming arm, you're dead. or you are 50-50 at chance going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Ward has that good, but not elite arm, but he already has that timing and sense of his head. So again, that's the misconception, is that his floor is way higher than he gets credit for. I think is the biggest misconception about him.
So even just mentioning the phrase sidearm throws automatically puts Patrick Mahomes into the minds of anybody listening, right? And I'm not trying to lead us down a path of comparing the two quarterbacks, but a big thing with Mahomes coming out was the way Andy Reid kind of used a lot of those red flags that were working against Mahomes in the pre-draft process and kind of turned them into strengths, right? To make him this superhuman, maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen. Has that experience, what Mahomes and Andy Reid, what he did with Mahomes, has that changed anything about how you evaluate these guys in terms of some of these misconceptions that you're talking about actually turning into a strength for some of these prospects like a Cam Ward?
I think we're maybe not even just Mahomes, but guys like Allen, Lamar Jackson, even a guy like Justin Herbert, the guys at the top of the league. I maybe have gotten spoiled with this as growing up around Dante Culpepper, is that most quarterbacks are more of that mold now than other quarterbacks of that era of the early aughts. Actually, Tennessee had another quarterback of that who I do compare Cam Ward to, which is Steve McNair, which I've seen others kind of co-opt that comparison, which I take as a badge of honor. But I would say watching the guys like Mahomes, the true elite needle movers, like there's that big tier difference between the guys and then good enough to win with. I think Cam at the very least is good enough to win with, but it's that creativity, which is the word that we started this whole conversation with, I wrote about with Ward. It's not just creativity of scrambling or running around and throwing stuff outside the pocket and running and juking guys. There's creativity with arm angles, like which I brought up, but also just moving in the pocket and finding throwing lanes or scrambling to throw. And I think that's where modern quarterback play, it's a prerequisite, especially if you're taking a guy top 10. You have to be able to accomplish things within the pocket, within structure, but also have the creativity to ad-lib, and not just with your legs, but with your arm as well. This is why I was super high on Drake May last year, because I think he has all of the skill sets for this. This is why Jaden Daniels had some success last year. It's why Caleb Williams, I think, is going to be perfectly fine because he's able to accomplish both. That's what you have to be a real needle-moving quarterback. Accomplish if everything's scripted, everything's right and clean, you have to accomplish that. If things are just a little off kilter, a little screwy, you still have to get a positive play out of there. And I would say, I want to say it was Jordan Palmer had the line, and he was talking about Jared Goff. And he said, Jared Goff is the last quarterback that'll look like that'll go pick number one. And he means a true pocket passer, no lack of creativity. As much as if you can be high on Goff, he's a great pocket passer. But as soon as things get screwy, it all just comes unraveled. And now I think you got take a guy top 10, they have to be able to create. Guess what? Cam Ward can create. And that's why I think you see that threshold the top guys have. And when I look at these prospects, it's like, well, do you have that? You don't? Well, all right, I'm knocking you down a little bit. That's why I was a little lower on Michael Penix. Good athlete, but does not want to scramble and does not want to be creative. He wants to accomplish stuff from the pocket. So that's why I was a little lower on him, because I wasn't sure he could touch that ceiling that I think these guys should have.
And God knows Cam Ward has the confidence to think that he can make these throws or make these plays no matter what the scenario is. And I love, the McNair thing is such an interesting one. I guess, Nate, for you, what tape did you have on where that picture started to come into your mind? Because what I appreciate about you, beyond just the analysis of draft prospects and players and schematics that teams implement throughout the course of the NFL regular season, is that you have a depth of knowledge to be able to make those callbacks and to kind of provide examples of that. What tape was that? not when it comes. Listen, when you bring up Steve McNair here in Tennessee, that's not useless, bud. That's something that really, really rings some bells here, because they're just looking for some kind of quarterback that they can really lean into. It's been so damn long. So beyond evoking the emotional component of that and the intangible characteristics of McNair, that he just go out there and win games that you can't really quantify. What was it for you, or what kind of sequence was it for you that led you to start to have that comparison?
There's a couple runaround plays where Ward is bouncing off tackles or running out of kind of arm tackles in the pocket and would do like a little half spin. And I was like, I've seen this before. And then I kind of looked at the height and weight and I was, man, where is this? And good old YouTube. I remember McNair from back when I was, a teenager and a kid and everything. But again, I just want to rekindle the brain a little bit. And looking at it, they have the exact same build. They're both, Steve McNair was sub 6'2" at the combine. He's 6'1.5" or 6'1.75". I think they are almost the exact same height as Cam Ward. Cam Ward was 219, I think, at the combine. I think McNair was like 223, 224. So within the same little range there, same weight class, I would say. I would say McNair, though, had a stronger arm and was a little bit faster. Like he had a little bit more traits than Ward does. But play style, that sense of calmness, that toughness, as a runner, they win more with balance and contact balance and strength as opposed to maybe outright speed. Throwing creativity, I thought McNair was always one of the best players I've ever seen throwing on the move. And I think Ward is very accomplished in that area as well. It just happened that, the Titans might be taking Cam Ward as the number one pick. And the McNair was my comparison even from a few months ago, just waiting for the process to kind of like maximize where eyeballs on it, making that comparison. Now Titans have the number one pick. So I was like, oh, this kind of works out. But no, just build maybe some of the creation plays where it was a lot of those little half spins and everything. The throwing style isn't exactly the same. McNair was a little more traditional, a little bit more three quarters, but still, as far as just that creativity as a player with the build and with that strength and with that just calm demeanor. I don't know how to describe it. Just that I can't relate because I was a little more frantic as a quarterback. So, but just watching McNair and then watching Ward, just that sense of calmness on every play. Like they always know what the answer is going to be, even if the path to get to the answer when they have to show their work might be a little unorthodox, as I'll put it again. But again, I think it's a pretty easy comparison, one I've started to really like as I kind of even have sat and marinated on a little bit. That's why I kind of keep touting it a little bit.
It's a good one. Unorthodox doesn't matter as long as they find ways to make plays, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. And you have the necessary structure in place to support them, which is, of course, our biggest question here in Tennessee as to whether they are going to, and there will be some growing pains in year one. No player, when they get to the NFL level, is a finished product, and nobody expects it to be seamless. There was a million different reasons why Jaden Daniels had the success that he did beyond just being talented and going as the number 2 overall selection in last year's draft. So as you look at the roster construction of the Titans, understanding that they've made some moves along the offensive line, Zeitler being brought in here from Detroit, Dan Moore, the left tackle from the Pittsburgh Steelers, on a lucrative contract. But if it moves J.C. Latham over to right and puts him in a more comfortable position, then you're not as bent out of shape about the cost. Tony Pollard coming off a career year, even if he was the only good thing that they did on offense last year. How do you kind of see the mold of what they are building here in Tennessee and how that might help support Cam Ward as he moves forward? Or in a perfect world for you, would you rather see the player sit?
No, I'd rather have him play. I've always been more of a fan of a guy playing early on, even though if I brought up Culpepper, who sat a year before he started playing, he was coming from UCF, all that stuff. I like guys seeing live bullets early and getting used to that, getting used to the speed of the game. And I think a guy like Ward would definitely need that. As I mentioned before, I want to know, I think he has to learn how much he can test throws and learn what his arm limitations are. I keep acting like he has a soft arm. He has a great arm. It's a good arm. It's just not that upper tier arm. That I think that's where he has to figure it out. And I think you only could do that by making mistakes or having successes early. And then you just learn and watch yourself playing and learn what your thresholds are. I think I really am coming around on what the Titans are doing. I thought their defense had a lot of good bones last year. It kind of fell off in the second half of the year. But I really do. We won't talk about special teams, but we'll just focus on defense and offense.
Please God.
But I think on offense, though, I've been more. I understand the thinking behind the Dan Moore signing. I think more than the initial reaction that came out there. Is he a league average, above average tackle? That's where I would slot him. I would put him at above average. It's so hard to find these guys, and he's 26 and he doesn't have injury history, which I think is as important as anything else, that you can rely on him starting your 17 games at the tackle spot. And if he only gets you, I wouldn't say replacement level, but solid play, I still think that's a big improvement over what the Titans have had, or what a lot of teams have maybe at their tackle spots, because I'm still bullish on Latham. I thought putting him at the left side was always going to be a little A little iffy, but you had to give it a shot and see what he got there. Now he's going back to his college position at right tackle, where I think putting Zeitler next to him, now you got, 700 pounds of beef on the right-hand side, which I think is really interesting because now you go, okay, we run behind the right side. Anytime we have a short yardage play, let's run behind the right side. And I think that's a nice weapon to have. I think Zeitler's a good player still. I played with him at Wisconsin. I'm here talking to you guys. He's still playing in the league. He's a good pro. Like, he takes care of himself. He's smart. So I think that's going to be really good for Latham as well. It's not you're just throwing in some guy there that's just a stopgap. He is a stopgap, but he's a quality stopgap. I really like that signing. Now you get more. Now you got Cushenberry, hopefully back at center. And then at left guard, you got Skoronski. This, to me, is a top 12 offensive line, at least in theory. And then we got Bill Callahan behind it. So I think at the very least, that's a great place to put a young quarterback, especially one that you're trying to, learn what his thresholds are. I think a misconception that's happened the last few years is some of the teams that maybe splashed, like the Eagles. They brought in A.J. Brown, and everyone goes, that's what put him over the top, while completely ignoring what their offensive line has been doing the last decade. They go, Saquon Barkley put him over top, ignoring what the offensive line has been doing there. The offensive line is the engine of the team, of any team. That's why I'm very curious what the Bengals are going to end up doing and trying to figure that out. But that's why I'm optimistic and way more bullish on what the Titans are doing than I was even a month ago. I would say just free agency and maybe just marinating on what this class is. It's like, that's why I'm like, man, this is actually set up okay. Calvin Ridley is ideally a high end 2, as opposed to maybe your number 1 target getter, but it's a much better situation to have somebody and some other guys that are okay. I actually like the tight ends more than most people. I'm like the one guy that likes Josh Wiley. Nationally, I might be the only person that knows
following here for reasons
is there?
That are beyond me.
I might be
for sure.
The only person that knows his name. I liked him back in Cincinnati when I was watching Desmond Ridder. I was like, I actually like this skinny tight end that was doing some things. But anyways, I think they have a higher floor, even though they have the number 1 pick, then I think people realize, because they did the nice tweaks along their offensive line that makes me feel more bullish about them. So, yeah, I like the ecosystem that you could drop Ward into. Again, a lot more than I did a month ago.
Nate Tice, sports.yahoo.com is where you can read his deep dive on Miami quarterback and potential number 1 overall pick, likely number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward.
Nate_Tice on Twitter. And one of the many reasons I think you're a great follow, Nate, are your totally out of left field random comparisons to players in different eras from different sports. And to put a bow on the Cam Ward discussion, you did this with Caleb Williams last year, where you brought up Gahincha, who nobody will know who that is, a Brazilian soccer player from the 50s and 60s, regarded as one of the greatest dribblers in the history of the sport. And then you put up the video, and it's striking, the change of direction. Caleb Williams is shifting in the pocket. So I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Do you have one of those random out of left field, different spot? Oh, you already do for Cam Ward. Fantastic.
I do, because I regret not putting it in my article, because I had it in my notes and I just totally forgot to put it in there. It's a skateboarder.
Oh,
it's Rodney Mullen.
Amazing.
Stop it.
How about that one? Because he's very technically sound, but because he's so technically sound, he can do all the creative flair and do all the crazy things. If anyone doesn't know, Rodney Mullen invented the kickflip. He is the street skating version of Tony Hawk is to vert skating, but also an interesting interview. I highly recommend any interviews with Rodney Mullen, because he's a very smart guy. I think he has like an engineering degree from Florida. But anyways, Rodney Mullen, that would be my comparison for Cam Ward, just because of his creativity, but he has more technicality and more technical ability than you would think, because of all the creativity that he plays with.
You just made the tiniest percentage of our audience so happy. I mean,
that's all I live for. If I could just get 2 people that go, yes,
oh my goodness,
that's what I live for. That's it.
Always delightful to have Nate Tice on of Yahoo Sports. Sports.yahoo.com is where you can read the piece. Football 301 is where you can listen to all his analysis. They have a great crew doing a lot of fun stuff there at Yahoo. Buddy, thank you for jumping on the show. I apologize. I will never text you at 5 a.m. your time ever again.
You're welcome. 24/7 to text me, Buck. You're totally fine. Doesn't matter the time zone, even when you're in Europe.
We love to see it. Nate Tice, kind enough to make some time with us here on 104.5 The Zone. He's always a great get.